Self-care is meant to serve you, not the other way around. So if you feel like you're a slave to self-care and that it's not supporting you and serving you, then it's becoming this oppressive taskmaster in your life. And you are free to change the approach. You are free to change the frequency. You are free to focus on only one thing at a time.
Hey, I'm Mia Hemstad. I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I'm a trauma-informed self-care coach. I also live with diagnosed PTSD and depression. I started sharing my mental wellness journey online in 2017 when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety. And since then, I've heard from hundreds of women who all struggle with the same thing, putting ourselves last. This is a struggle that's keeping so many women burned out and unhappy, through no fault of our own, by the way. I've been working on my own healing as an abuse survivor since 2013. But when I became a mom, I really started to do the inner work of figuring out why I was putting myself last and how to start prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. This podcast is about sharing all of those lessons with you. So if you're interested in hearing honest stories, life advice, and inspiration that encourages you to make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely stick around. Welcome to your No Longer Last journey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode because it is all about how to overcome self-care overwhelm. And this is a really important topic because last week we talked all about being honest with yourself about how you're really doing, but what are you supposed to do with that information? What are you supposed to do when you realize I'm actually not doing great? I actually feel terrible and I feel terrible all the time. But Mia, whenever I get time to myself, like my partner's with the kids, or I have a sitter that I've hired, or the baby's taking their nap once a day. And every time I get time to myself, I get overwhelmed. I get anxious. I worry that I'm going to overlook the most important thing and that I'm going to not prioritize what's needed. And then instead of actually eating a meal or even brushing your teeth, you realize that you were scrolling on your phone or doing whatever you need to do to keep yourself from having a full-on panic attack. I get that, and I want you to know that actually a lot of people get that. For several months, I used to ask once a week of my community on Instagram, I would say, hey, have you ever experienced this phenomenon where you finally get an hour to yourself and instead of like being like, oh, finally, and you like go and take care of like all of your basic needs, you get so overwhelmed by that hour or a couple of hours that you end up numbing or doing like 10% of like 10 different tasks and nothing actually gets completed or done and you don't feel satisfied and you actually feel more frustrated. Every time I ask that question via poll, like 95% of people said yes, they understood it. And I call that self-care overwhelm. And I hope you don't make yourself feel bad about this because I think it is completely normal for this to happen to moms. We are externally focused all the time. How are we supposed to then suddenly become internally focused and choose the right self-care that's going to replenish us and, not miss out on the most important things that we're somehow supposed to all get done in this very short amount of time that we get every once in a while? How are we not supposed to get overwhelmed by that? We're not used to being internally focused. So it can be very, very hard, and it's a muscle you have to grow and develop. And so I just want you to know that you're not alone in that and that it is very difficult for a reason. Secondly, I want to say that I used to feel this overwhelm all the time. Like literally a sitter would come over or my baby would be taking a nap and I would end up scrolling on my phone because I had this anxiety about not doing what I needed to do because my time to myself was always so sporadic and so inconsistent and hard to get. I would just get super scared that I wouldn't get the most important things done. And I had a growing list of things that needed to get done because I never had any time to myself. So the list would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And when I talk about self-care, please know that I'm not just talking about things like, exercise and taking a shower. I'm actually talking about your entire life. I look at self-care from a very holistic lens. And so, when you only get an hour to yourself and the only thing that you get done is the laundry, that's still self-care. So you know that I'm talking about that as well. However, is that the most important self-care task that you should have used that hour for, that's what I think can also cause anxiety because we're not sure. And then next thing you know, your time is up and you didn't even brush your teeth or take a shower or eat a meal, which is what should have went first. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. This is episode 2 well, it's not episode 2, it's technically like episode 14, but this is a series of episodes that I am curating for all of you to give you the tools you need to prevent burnout, get yourself out of burnout, and create a clear path to be able to take care of yourself in a sustainable and realistic way. That's what I'm a big fan of. So today's tool is the 4B self-care framework. And this is honestly the cure for that self-care overwhelm that I'm talking about. And you probably have heard me talk about this framework a ton. It's because I'm really proud of it. And I've been teaching it for 3 years now. And not a single one of my clients who I've taught this to has a negative story. They are all like positive, and they let me know without me even asking how much this framework has helped change their life. So the 4B self-care framework is really simple. It's 4 types of self-care that cover a holistic view of self-care, making sure to cover all the different areas of your life. So the different self-care starts with the letter B because I need anything that can help me remember things because I have PTSD, I don't sleep well, and the first thing that leaves me when I'm chronically sleep deprived is my ability to remember, my ability to plan, and my ability to prioritize. So I hear you, and I use this framework almost daily. I run through the checklist, all 4 Bs. So the first B is basic, and in basic self-care is 5 types of self-care, but I'll go through that in a minute. But just know that the 4 Bs are basic, boring, brilliant, and bougie. Basic, boring, brilliant, and bougie. Say it again. Basic, boring, brilliant, and bougie. Those are the 4 types of self-care. And I'm sorry, my chair is making noise because I'm wobbling around while I dance to this terrible rap that I'm making. So with basic self-care, there are 5 kinds of self-care. There's sleep, eating well, hydration, hygiene, and movement. That's sleep, eating well, hydration, hygiene, and movement. So basic self-care should always come first. So if you only have an hour, I want you to go through your basic self-care checklist. Sleep, eating well, hydration, hygiene, movement. You figure out which of those 5 of the basics you need the most, and you go and you do that, okay? That's what we're going to do. That is the first line of defense in preventing burnout, is that basic self-care. The second is boring. And this is really important because it's all about doing the stuff you're avoiding. But because you're avoiding it, it is building up mental clutter. And sometimes even physical clutter, like that box you won't take to Goodwill for some reason. That is boring self-care. It's doing the tasks that you're avoiding that is taking up space in your life and sometimes even causing you to feel weighed down mentally or physically with guilt or shame or anxiety. Because you're not addressing the pile of credit card bills that are piling up. You're not addressing, the fact that you should call the IRS. You're not addressing, the clutter that's building up in your closet. That's boring self-care. And then brilliant self-care comes from the word brilliance, which means light, luminosity, glow. To me, this is whatever lights you up. And this could be having a hobby. This could be going to a dance class. This could be trying something new. This could be going to the movies, playing video games, watching your favorite show, making sure to hang out with a friend. Whatever lights you up and feeds you spiritually and emotionally, that is brilliant self-care. And the last one is bougie self-care. And I know you think you already know, Mia, this is bubble baths. Mia, this is face masks. And it could be if that's something that feels good to you. But for me, the way I define bougie self-care is it is actually whatever feels luxurious to you. And in the essence of how I teach bougie self-care, when I take people through a month of practicing this, it's actually about facing your money trauma. It's about giving yourself the chance to let those feelings come up of why you won't allow yourself to have stuff that feels good to you and where those beliefs came from and if they're still true. Because a lot of us are depriving ourselves of things and experiences that we really want because we are operating from the belief that we don't have the money for it, even though we actually do, because maybe when you were a kid, there was no money for anything. And I just want clients to challenge themselves when they practice bougie self-care to make sure that it's actually true. So during the practice of bougie self-care, there's actually a facing of your finances that needs to happen. There's actually a facing of the money trauma that needs to happen. And bougie self-care has been transformative for me because I grew up with a ton of money trauma and a lot of lack, and it's been very, very healing. So those are the 4 types of self-care. I have put them all together with explanations and visuals in a little ebook for you, or a mini course, depending on how you like to consume your content. There's like an audio version and a beautiful PDF digital ebook guide. You can grab that at miahemstad.com/course. So I will just put that in the show notes for you. But in essence, that's the framework. And I go through that checklist whenever I am doing my weekly wellness check-in. And if you listen to the last episode, episode 13, you will know that the next 5 episodes, which is episode 13 through 17, I'm breaking down the weekly wellness check-in practice that I do one component at a time. So this is the second component, right? The first component was, how am I doing mentally, emotionally, physically? You figured out how you're doing. And then the next component is, okay, I realize that I'm not doing great, or I realize that this is what's happening with me. Now, how do I take care of myself? How do I respond to how I'm feeling? Using the 4B framework will help you make sure that you are prioritizing what needs to be prioritized, basic self-care, and that you are not missing anything. And that's why I love that boring self-care, because most of us are going to keep avoiding and procrastinating on those boring tasks. And if we just face them, it would free up so much energy in our lives. So I love this framework. I developed it, again, because of my own need to stop feeling overwhelmed whenever my sitter would come over. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I am paying good money for a sitter to come once a week, and every time she comes, I am numbed out on my phone. And then in between being numbed out on my phone, I am literally like doing 10% of like 5 tasks, like a little bit of laundry, wipe 1 counter, unload half of the dishwasher, sweep part of the floor. And then her time is up and she's leaving. And I realize I'm in yesterday's, like 2 days ago, pajamas. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so real. And this framework helped me to get out of it. And even the therapist as I was seeing at the time, I was so proud of it. I was like, oh, I developed this like framework, and it all starts with B, and it helps me like not feel overwhelmed, and it helps me take care of myself, even if I only have 30 minutes. And I told her about it, and she was like, do you mind if I share that with my other clients? And this was before I had a coaching program or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, absolutely. And, and that made me think like, I guess this is like helpful, like maybe not just for me, maybe this will be helpful for other people. So yeah, that's one of the first things I started teaching when I launched my coaching program back in 2020. But since then, I share it and I make it free because I want as many people as possible to know about this and to use it because it works. So, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I have a story for you that I think is going to inspire you to practice some boring self-care. This is about a client of mine who, it's about her boring self-care story and what it was and what it did for her. And I can't wait to share that story when you get back from the break. Hey, this is a reminder that my coaching program, the No Longer Last Journey, is reopening with special bonuses on October 1st. This is really exciting if you've been waiting for an opportunity to work with me in a deeper capacity, because this coaching program is 12 months long, and it's because I take you through foundations for self-care, boundary setting, and the entire 4B framework. We practice every type of self-care 1 month at a time. It's doable, it's sustainable, it's realistic, and it brings you together with other like-minded mamas and other like-minded women who also want to find a way to prioritize their health, happiness, and well-being. The thing that I think makes my program unique and impactful is the fact that everything that I teach is rooted in my lived experience of being a mother, being an abuse survivor, living with mental health conditions, and knowing what it's like to grow up poor and to have gone through a lot of financial lack in my life. I know what it's like to have tight resources, no supportive family around, and just to have all of those challenges. I am really excited because the approach that I have been teaching for the last 3 years has gotten clients actual results and does meet them where they're at. So with that being said, go and check it out if it resonates. Go and check it out if you're ready to make change in your life and to have someone walk with you through that process, because I am just really excited for this next cohort of women. I think it's going to be a really exciting next 12 months. And if you want to know about the bonuses that I'm offering this time around, you will get a free one-on-one coaching session with me, which is worth $75. And you will get free access to a brand new digital product I'm making, which is the weekly wellness check-in guided journal. And this is going to be the entire weekly wellness check-in with all 5 steps with 6 months worth of pages and affirmations and guidance from me. So this product is going to be $40, but you're going to get access to it completely for free when you join my coaching program before the bonuses expire on October 6th. So lots of exciting things to look forward to. I'm really excited to chat with anyone that has questions about it. You can email me. My email address is mia@miahemstad.com. And I will be actually opening up my schedule so you can chat with me one-on-one for 20 minutes. And I will make that available via email. I'll send out the link. I think October 1st is when I'll send it out. So make sure you're on my email list if you aren't already, so that you can talk with me. If you read the webpage, go to miahemstad.com/no longer last to learn about the coaching program. And if you have any additional questions or you just want to chat with me and see if we vibe, we click, whatever, I'm happy to do that. And I'm not salesy, I'm not pushy. I genuinely want you to join if you feel emotionally and also financially ready to take this step in your own healing journey. So yeah, that's all I had to say about the program, and I hope you check it out. The links are in the show notes, and let's get back to the show. Okay, so I love this story because I really think it exemplifies the power of boring self-care. So whenever I tell people about boring self-care, at first they're just like, number one, the name is boring, so why would I want to do this? And number two, you're telling me I need to do the stuff that I am purposefully avoiding because it makes me uncomfortable. And I'm like, yes, you're correct. Those two things are true. So back in 2020, when I first launched the program, me and my clients were all doing one self-care practice per month. So we started out with sleep, then eating well and hydration, and then hygiene, movement. And then we went to boring self-care. And I was really trying to rally the troops. And I was like, you guys, I'm telling you, this month is going to be transformative. We're all going to do this together. We're all going to identify our one boring self-care task we're going to tackle this month. And I feel like I definitely was way more excited because I had been through it before. I had practiced this myself before I shared it with other people. But almost all of my clients who participated in this challenge, and they all came back and said, this month has been the most transformative month so far, and that they didn't expect it. And let me give you an example. So one of my clients said that she had bought a domain name for a business idea she had a very, very long time ago. And if you don't know what a domain name is, it's like a website URL. So my domain name is miahemstad.com. And she said that it's just been so many things had happened in her life, and she never was able to get the business off the ground, never was able to implement it or just show up for it. And like, things happen. I have lots of ideas and things that have never come to light, but there's no shame in that. But the thing is that we do feel guilt and shame for those things. And that's how she was feeling. And she didn't really realize it because she had just gotten so good at shoving down those feelings. So because we were doing this challenge together, she was like, okay, what is something that I've been avoiding? And then she was like, oh, that domain name. And the reason why she was avoiding it is because it brought up a lot of feelings of guilt and feelings of like failure and feeling like she gave up on herself. You know, all these stories we tell ourselves, when in reality, there's a lot of circumstances outside of our control that impact our ability to pursue things. We know this, but you know, our mind makes up the narratives that we're failures. So she said that because she never canceled the domain name subscription, every single month she gets an email with a receipt showing that she's paid money yet again to keep this domain name. And she said every time she sees that charge come through on her credit card statement and in her email inbox, she said she gets like a pang of guilt in her stomach, and she feels, it just reminds her of all the negative stories, all the horrible negative stories that have been running through her mind about how she's a failure and she messed up in the past, so she can't do anything in the future. It's over for her and all these things. And she said that during that month, she faced those feelings. She sat down and she canceled the domain name She was like, if I come up with a new idea in the future, that's great, but this idea has sailed for me and that's okay. She said that when she canceled it, she felt a massive weight lift off of her shoulders. And I absolutely believe it because I've experienced this in a lot of other ways. And another thing that I want to point out that this does for you, it's not just the relief that you get immediately, but when we let go of things that are not working out, when we let go of things that make us uncomfortable and bring up difficult feelings, and that's why we're avoiding them. When we find the courage and we face it and we let it go or we address it, not only does it give us this wave of relief, but it also frees up so much energy, space, and time that you can make space for other things now. I could give you so many examples. Like there were certain group chats that I was in with certain people that always brought me down and always gave me anxiety. But I knew that if I left the group chat, that people might say stuff about me or think stuff about me, and that I would have to face those feelings. I would need to face the feelings of the fact that I care a lot about what people say about me. And that comes from my people-pleasing nature that I developed in order to survive throughout my, how do I say this? When I was being abused. When you can be the most pleasing person ever, then you can you do that to try to protect yourself from abuse. That's what I'm trying to say. And so I try to avoid as much as possible the potential of anyone thinking anything negative about me, and even at my own expense. And so something that I have done recently was I left a bunch of group chats that I did not want to be in. And I had to sit with the uncomfortable feelings that people may or may not be saying things about me that I don't like, and that's not within my control. That's none of my business and it's not my problem. And when I tell you the relief that I have now and the weight that has been lifted off my shoulders and the time and space and energy that I've had to cultivate new relationships and connect with other people because I'm not stressing about this other thing has been amazing. I have been able to finally reconnect with old friends and new ones and keep in touch with them monthly, if not weekly. And all of that happened because I showed up for my boring self-care and I did the task I was avoiding, just like my client did when she let go of that URL. And after she did that, several months later, she started to sell a new product. And I'm not going into details about what it is because I don't want to divulge her identity. But basically, she started to develop a different business and to show up and sell her product in other ways. And she said that was bringing her a lot of joy. And I honestly feel that when we let go of this dead weight, of these things that make us feel bad, of these things that drain us of our energy, when we let it go, we are able to rekindle the energy we need to pursue the things that we want right now. So that's the power that boring self-care can have in your life. I mean, that's just one of many, many stories that I could share and go into. But I really hope that inspires you to dig into the 4B framework for yourself. What self-care do you need most right now? Is it basic self-care? Is it boring self-care? Is it brilliant? Is it bougie? Is it a combination? I at the very least try to sit down and do this reflection once a month, if not weekly. And I try to do one basic self-care per day, 1 to 2, outside of my usual, because there's a lot of my basic self-care that's now habitual. Thank goodness. I used to everything used to be hard. But a lot of my basic self-care is now non-negotiable, habitual. It's a ritual in my life. But there's a few that I have to be super proactive about, like with my sleep. I have to set a whole bunch of alarms and go through this mental process to go to bed a certain time. So that's my basic self-care intention. And then my boring self-care intention, for instance, right now, I would say is keeping up with my bookkeeping and my business because I hate doing that. And then my brilliant self-care is I schedule Zoom calls every month with my friends. I actually have one scheduled in an hour and 45 minutes so I can keep in touch. That lights me up. I love connecting with people that I love. And then bougie self-care, I recently went to the movies twice. I saw Barbie and Oppenheimer, and that was awesome. And I love going to the movies. It feels luxurious to me. And it also forces me to, face my money trauma because it's I shouldn't go to the movies. I should wait till it goes on streaming. It'll be cheaper. But I love the process of going to the movies and getting popcorn and being in the dark theater. So that's my bougie self-care. So it doesn't all have to happen all at one time. And that's what I really want you to know. You don't need to take this framework and become overwhelmed with it. you can start just with basic and focus on the basics for as long as you need. Like I said, in my program, I walk people through 4 months of just the basics. We start with sleep. A whole month is dedicated to sleep. Then we do eating well and hydration are paired together for a whole month. Hygiene is a whole month, and then intentional movement is a whole month. So that's 4 months focused on basic self-care. And then we have a month dedicated to boring, and then brilliant, and then bougie. So take your time with it. Take 30 days if you need. Like, I've been doing this framework for 4 or 5 years now. And so now I'm able to do 1 to 2 basic self-care intentions per day. I do 1 boring self-care intention per week. And then I do 1 brilliant self-care intention per month and 1 bougie self-care intention per month. And sometimes if my bougie self-care intention is bigger, like I went and saw Beyonce, that's like a bougie self-care intention that I've waited years to do. So think of it that way. And I have a little intention setting printable for you that lists those different frequencies. So that's in the ebook. I talked about the 4B self-care framework mini course. It's an ebook / audio that you can get for free. Links in the show notes. And at the end of it, after explaining all the framework, there's a printable page where you can write down your intentions and, keeping in mind that you don't do everything every single day. You don't. And when we try to go in overdrive after years of self-neglect, we burn out. Like, don't make self-care burn you out. I like to say, and I tell this to my clients, I swear on a monthly basis, if self-care feels oppressive, then you're doing it wrong. The nicer version actually that I usually say is self-care is meant to serve you, not the other way around. Self-care is meant to serve you, not the other way around. So if you feel like you're a slave to self-care and that it's not supporting you and serving you, then it's becoming this oppressive taskmaster in your life. And you are free to change the approach. You are free to change the frequency. You are free to focus on only one thing at a time. There was several months this year where I focused only on sleep, trying to figure out what worked, what didn't, what I needed, if I needed medications. Like, I just have been going hard on my sleep, and things are still up and down. They're not great. And I recognize that, and I'm still in the process of learning. And that's another thing I want to point out. You can set an intention to improve your sleep or to improve your exercise or to improve your eating, and it could take you a whole year. And that's okay, because this framework is not about checking boxes off a to-do list. This framework is about changing your life and changing your relationship to self-care. I want you to learn how to have a positive, healthy, guilt-free, shame-free relationship with self-care. And that's what this framework can do for you if you choose to approach it from a place of self-love instead of a place of wanting to be perfect at it. So that's something that's learned over time, and that's something that I teach before we even go into the 4B framework of my coaching program. It's called the Foundations of Self-Care, and I go through the approach. I call it the no longer last approach to life, and it helps you set up yourself mentally, because I think a lot of us, when we go into any sort of intention setting, it can become like goal setting, and it can become planning and being a taskmaster, and we can fall into like these old personal development tropes of being harsh with ourselves and over disciplined and critical. And I don't want you to do that. The no longer last way it's rooted in kindness and self-compassion, and we're not about that life of just being hard on ourselves and ignoring our feelings. So yeah, I hope that resonates. This week, I'm going to be emailing you an affirmation that you can download and use as your phone background. And it is: self-care does not solve all your problems, but it does help you handle your problems from a place of strength instead of depletion. I absolutely love this because it keeps it in check. This is not meant to solve all your problems. We need to be realistic here. We live in a world where misogyny and sexism and racism and lots of isms and lots of oppression exists. So if you are struggling, if you are nearing burnout every month or so, I just want you to know that you don't live in a world that is set up for the success of a woman. And it's not set up for the well-being of mothers. It is not set up for us to thrive. The very act of learning how to take care of ourselves on a regular basis it's like powerful. It is a way of saying, I am going to show up for me, even though all these forces are trying to keep me burned out and broken. I will not be burned out and broken. And I am all about seeking justice and making our society more just and fair. And that's part of why I work so hard at my job. I work at a nonprofit where we advocate for maternal mental health policies because we need change at the systemic level, at the policy level, at the national level. But I can't do that if I don't take care of myself, and neither can you. Lastly, I have an action item for you. Go and get the framework. Like I said, it's available on my website, miahemstad.com/course. I'm sorry it doesn't have a memorable name. I'm working on that one, a little bit of behind the scenes with businesses. It's like you got to create names for everything and it's difficult. But it's the 4B framework, the 4B self-care framework mini course. And I'll link that for you in the show notes. And I would love for you to set a self-care intention. What self-care intention are you going to practice this week? Is it going to be basic, boring, brilliant, or bougie? You can always email me or DM me on Instagram and share your self-care intention with me. I would love to cheer you on and support you through that. All right, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. It was a joy to share this episode. As you can tell, I get very excited when I talk about this framework. And I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.